Today we'll be painting up Lannister Guardsmen from the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game to celebrate Game of Thrones Season 8. So once the model's primed, we're going to start off with a Vampire Red from Army Painter, and we're just going to be applying thin coats of paint in multiple layers, and doing this by just thinning down the paint just a little bit with water, sort of nearly a 50-50 mix, and just applying them one at a time. So placing them over just like this once, waiting for it to dry, then placing another light layer over top. It gives a lot nicer finish, and it gets rid of a lot of the streak marks from miniatures when you're painting them. So now that all those layers have been built up and they're all nice and dry, it's looking really good, and now we just want to move quickly on to painting the boots, and we're going to be doing that with necromancer cloak, and it's just going to be a nice quick coverage over the whole thing. Then once we have that dried up and done, we're going to start moving on to some of the leather working that's on here, such as the belts, the straps, the little pouch he has on them, and we're going to be doing that with dirt spatter by Army Painter as well. And just taking a smaller brush now, slowly going over these areas, trying not to get over any of the red that we've just done, and not forgetting all the little places we're going to do. We're going to do it across just everywhere we see a place where leather can be, and just giving it nice coats as well as we did with our red. Okay, so once we have all that leather working done and dried up, we're going to now be moving on to the arm of the Lannister Guardsmen here, and we're going to be painting it up with our necromancer cloak that we painted up our boots with. So doing that, we're going to just give it a nice coverage over the glove here, trying to keep it nice and streak free as much as we possibly can by using our same technique, which is just going over it again with two thin layers rather than one layer. I've really found this is a good way to get things done. Okay, so now that we have those gloves painted up, we're now going to be moving on to all the metalwork over the Lannister Guardsmen, and we're going to be doing that in a gunmetal. So what we're going to do is we're just going to be painting over these the sword, the helmet, our shoulder pauldrons, and just all the parts here that are nice and big chunky metal pieces. And we're going to be doing that again with our two thin layers to keep much of those streak marks down as we can. Just giving it a nice base coat, and trying not to make it pull up a lot, which and those cracks in that we can see there, because we're going to be going over them with a wash, which will really bring those out. So keeping it with those thin layers is really going to help this out, and just being careful to avoid our red also. Okay, so now that we have all that metalworking done, we're now going to be moving with our oak brown, and we're going to be painting the inside of the guardsman's shield. So just getting a nice small detail brush here, and just being careful to avoid the parts that we've already painted. And again, I'll be applying this in two thin coats to try to keep our streak marks down. Then once that's complete, we're now going to be moving on to the skin tone, and we're going to be doing that in an elven flesh. So it's quite a light skin tone, as the Lannisters are from the south of Westeros. They seem to be very pale skinned people, and we're just going to be applying that carefully with another small detail brush, and just keeping it as neat as we possibly can. Is complete, we're going to be moving on to just some other bits that I notice here that I want to change up slightly, and I'm just going to be painting this part of our glove an actual metal here to give it a bit more armored up look like the Lannisters are, but this is totally up to you. Just an option that I want to go with here, giving it a little bit more detail than what I originally was intending for. And also we want to be doing this to our pants as well. We're using our necromancer cloak to carry our pants all the way up, as I didn't want so much red all over, so it sort of melded all together. So we're just coming back here with the necromancer cloak, of course, tidying it up, making it look like actual pants. Okay, so once all those are finished, you can see that it's really put a little bit more detail into our Lannister Guardsmen. So now we're going to come in with greedy gold, and now we're going to be doing a lot of fine detail work here on the Lannister Guardsmen by painting over our bits and pieces and our trimmings that Lannister Guardsmen seem to really look nice when they have all this over them. So we're just coming over here over our shield. We want to be painting all the edges of it, as well as the lion symbol in the middle of the shield. And what I'm doing here is I'm just hitting it with the edge of the brush, not the tip, just the edge, so it catches over that really fine detail you can see on that tail. And once you painted all that, there's some other details we want to do. So going over the handle of our sword here and the hilt, and we also want to be doing the main lion symbol that the Lannister Guardsman has on his chest. And we're also going to be really carefully, there's a seam line between the edge of this armor that we can paint in. Now this is totally optional, but you may also want to do a nice gold trim around the coat of the guardsman. I've never done any work like this before, but I'm going to give it my best try. And don't forget, if you don't like the way it turns out, you can always just paint it back over with the red. Okay, so now that you can see I've done all this gold highlighting over it, we're just going to come over quickly with a matte black, and we're just going to paint the base up. But you can see here that highlighting's brought out a lot of additional detail to our miniature, which is really going to look nice on the tabletop when we're actually going to play our game. And then once you've painted up the base, we're going to be moving on to our next step, which we're going to be just painting up the little bits of hair that you can see on these Lannister Guardsmen with a monster brown, which is sort of just a light brown, but you of course may want to do a more blondie color, maybe some black hair, some red hair. It's totally up to you, but I'm just going to go with this really light brown, since most of the Lannisters seem to have light colored hair. And just carefully going in with our detail brush, trying to keep it as neat as we possibly can now. Okay, now that we have that done, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving on to our washes, and we're going to start off here with our strong tone from Army Painter, and we're going to be applying this all over our coat, our boots, and our leather working. So just really liberally applying this here, making nice quick passes, and just trying to avoid all our metallic work apart from our gold trim that we have on a shirt. We want to sort of tie that in, and the strong tone will allow us to do that quite well, with making it more of a fabric looking thing rather than a complete metallic edge on our piece. So just going over here nice and quick, really trying to get in all those gaps, but avoiding it from pulling too much. And then once that's all dry, you can see it's darkened everything down nicely, including our greedy gold. And we're going to move on to our next step, which is nuln oil, and we're going to be placing that over all our metallic areas. So on our armor, our sword, and you can see I left the cap on my paintbrush here, so I need to take that off. But we want to just go over all these metallic bits and be careful of it pooling too much. We don't want to darken the metal down way too much here. So just being careful of it pooling, and all you have to do to avoid that is to just come in with a empty brush and then just dab it on and it'll suck it all up. But we're just being really generous with it here. Then once all that's done, we're going to be moving on to our flesh wash, and we're just going to be painting up our face of our Lannister, being reasonably careful now with a smaller brush and trying not to get it all over our metalworking that we've just done. And we also want to just get a little bit of the hair and putting a little bit more tension into the mouth and the eyes, sort of, so it settles in there quite well. Then once that's done, we're going to be moving on with a shining silver, and what we're going to be doing is going over the edges of our metalworking that we've done with our gunmetal and dulled down with our nuln oil. So pretty much you want to pick spots where the light's going to hit this armor as much as possible, and we're just applying it super thin. We're just going to be using our one layer here to do this. Then once that's complete, we're going to be moving on to our greedy gold again, and we're going to be doing the same thing that we just did with our armor, but we're also just going to apply it just a little bit over our main piece on our coat as well, just to bring that back out. And being very careful now, not trying to cover the whole thing again in our greedy gold. We just want to try hit those highlights, and the best way to do that is just quick little strokes, just touching the miniature on the raised areas. And then with all of that done, we are now complete with our Lannister Guardsmen. And you can see that with all that detail work that the Lannister Guardsman has on it, it comes out really nice when you highlight it up with all those gold trims there. It just adds a lot more detail than you see on most miniatures. So with that, we've come to the end of the video. I'd like to thank you all for watching and celebrating the Game of Thrones season with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.